He's not in the room, so.
All right, we are live. I am here with Danette. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, whether you are joining us live, whether you're watching this recorded. I am grateful for you welcoming us into whatever part of your day you're in. I do have to remember, click go live over here on Instagram as well, and we are live there also. I am really excited to introduce you to somebody that is very special to me, and I will share a little bit more about that after I let Danette tell you who she is and what she does. But again, if you comment, sometimes I don't notice it. We do go back to the social media, different places that it's posted, and I try to get to those comments or questions. So if you ask a comment or if you ask a comment, if you ask a question or you comment and we don't respond, please know that we'll go back to it. I do also want to note I guess it really isn't going to help the folks who are not on Facebook, but Facebook's having an error again today. They've been having some connectivity issues, and so I'm getting the error message that it's not flowing over there. So in the event that anybody in your audience reaches out to you and says, I'm on Facebook and you're not there, we are on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. But right now, Facebook something's happening there. That's okay. These things happen and we'll be all right. So, all right. Danette, tell everybody who you are and what you do, and then we're going to chat.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm Danette Kubanda, and I'm a multiple Emmy-winning national television producer turned media and publicity coach. So right now I'm helping authors, experts, and entrepreneurs share their message with the masses so that they can help the people who need them the most. And I'm just thrilled to be here with you, Deb. It's so much fun.
It's very fun. And I love, I'm glad, you were very succinct in kind of talking about what you do, because I was hoping that you'd get everything in, and you did in a really nice way. Obviously, you're gifted in that. And I am going to start off by, since you posted earlier, mentioning something that I had just gotten, because it's going to be a good segue into our conversation. So this is my first time live showing my silver play button, which I am very, very excited about. And I appreciate your enthusiasm. I appreciate all of the love and enthusiasm that I have gotten. And we'll talk a little bit about the journey to this.
Congratulations. It's beautiful, and you are so deserving. It's an amazing accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And with that is where I'd like to talk a little bit about how I came to know you, and that'll lead into some questions that I have. So obviously you're aware of how I know you, but for the audience here, when I first started kind of recognizing that it was time to step into something bigger, not that I hadn't been already living a big life, but I was doing it a little bit behind the curtain for a variety of different reasons. Some of those intentional, and some of those just lack of awareness that there were things that I could do, and had realized pretty strongly that I was a lot of internal messages and external messages telling me to step out a little more, and had gone online, done some challenges with Super Connector Media, and via that connected with Danette, who was the first person then who really started talking to me about navigating the media, which at that point I knew very little. Like, who do you reach out to? What do you do? How do you make yourself more seen? And probably asked the same question each time that I spoke to her about trying to get over this fear of, well, if I put myself out there, am I saying that I think I'm better than anybody? And Danette very lovingly and very consistently and persistently reminded me that in order for me to do the big things in a visible way so that I could reach more people, I had to put myself out there, and that's the gift. That's not arrogance. That's being a giver, and that's allowing people to receive that love. And so that was really a lot of the start of the journey to my silver play button, because to be honest, at that point, a lot of the content that I had on YouTube was not even public facing. It was stuff that I would put out there, and then I would have, it was, I forget what you call it, but it was, you could access it publicly, but it wasn't published. So like you'd have to have the link specifically to get to it. And, I just think in my mind, it was kind of like, well, this is the content. People want to see it. Those people that need to see it, I'll share it with. And I started realizing that I needed to change that. It still took me a bit. It really wasn't until December. So it was like in January of 2023 where I started the process of realizing. And in December of 2023, I had 23 subscribers and said to myself, like, this is not the way to do this. You need to dig in deep. And, now I've got over 100, it's like almost 110,000 subscribers, and the silver play button that I watched my kids watch their favorite content creators get when they were on their journeys. And so to be able to kind of now have that, it's for me very much an awareness of what you can do. But I needed that reminder. And I think as confident as we are, or as insecure as we are, right, all of those different things, it's really important for us to connect with people that are going to help us remember that our light needs to be shown. And part of the way that's going to be shown is on social media. It's a way to reach people where they are. So I know you do that for people the same way that you did that for me. And part of that comes from your journey. What is it that somebody comes to you and they're like, I want to be in the media, and they've never been in the media. Maybe talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what that's like to breathe that into somebody and get them from, being behind the curtain to being out front so people can hear them.
Well, I think a lot of people, especially the people that I come in contact with, especially you, come into this from a place of service. You have some way that you can help somebody else live a better life. And sometimes you just need to be reminded about that, because that's your why. And then all these other thoughts come into play. Like, what will they think of me? Does it sound like I'm bragging? Those kinds of questions come up quite often for people. But I try to just remember, bring you back to that why. Why are you doing what you do? Why do you feel called to do this? And it's from a place of service. You know that there are people out there who you can help, who will benefit from your message. And I think that was the big thing for me, was just to help you see yourself the way I see you, and the way so many people see you, because you are a giver. You said that you are a giver, and you would never hesitate. If anybody asked you for something, I could a million times over see you just handing it to them. And sometimes just that it's your message that they need the most. So being able to step in front of the camera, step in front of your audience, whether that's on a stage, or on social media, wherever that might be, and just share that message so that 1 or 2 or 110,000 people who need you hear your message, and you can start changing lives, because I know that's what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. And Danette, you were a model of that, because I remember when we were on the conversations and I first saw your Emmys in the background, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then, of course, come to hear your story of how you journeyed to them, and you display them publicly. And it's very much because I think we all win together, right? And so when we display those things, we're allowing us to celebrate together, right? Like when you do something good, I'm like, yes, I mean, out loud. When I do something, I know that there are people doing that for me. And so I watched the way you did that, and you walk with such humility and with such grace and compassion. And those awards are publicly displayed because it's like, this is part of me. This is something I set my mind to. Guess what? You can do it too. And so we can also model that for people like you modeled that for me. And maybe you could share a little bit about that story of you kind of declaring when you were a kid that you wanted that, and what that's like now to turn around and they're right there with you.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. I had this list of kind of, like a bucket list, I guess, that I wrote when I was 15. And there were several items on it, one of which was to win an Emmy. One was to work for Oprah, one was to win an Emmy. And I just kind of set out to check off everything on that list. So when I did earn that spot on the Oprah show, she had already taken herself and the show out of the running for Emmys. She had already won so many. She didn't want to win anymore. She wanted to leave it open for other people, which is noble.
Yeah.
But, didn't do me and my checklist any good. So I served there for about 4 years, and then realized that in order to achieve those other goals, I just had to find a different way around. And sometimes sometimes your path to reaching a goal is pretty straightforward. Other times you just have some obstacles to go through, or some, have to look at it from a different perspective. So I worked on a couple of other shows and a couple of other networks until I was lucky enough to not win just one Emmy, but 2. So I call them my first set of twins, human twins as well. But it was pretty amazing to be able to check that off. And that's part of it too. Like you said, displaying it. I want my kids to see that too, that if there's something they really want in life, they can set those goals for themselves, and I'll be right right behind them, cheering them on, right beside them, helping them get there. But they are the ones who are ultimately going to be achieving those goals. So, and I think it just helps, like you said, with anybody I'm working with, over Zoom or whatever it might be, to just let them know, number one, they're working with someone who's credible, who's been through the business and knows what she's talking about, but also to reestablish that the idea of chasing those goals, those dreams, whatever they may be, they are possible. It may be a journey. There may be some struggles, but you can do it.
That brilliant. So many things that you said there really actually gave me goosebumps thinking about, well, first off, I think what you were talking about with your children, right? And I can relate to that. And I will say that, when the silver play button came, and I didn't know that it was outside on the front steps. And so God bless my husband for brilliantly coming upstairs and saying to me, hey, when I call you in a second, can you come outside? I wanted to show you something. I had no idea. I mean, it wasn't even on my radar. And so he calls me out and he's filming me. And I'm thinking, what am I about to walk out to see right now? I didn't know if it was going to be something silly. Was there an animal in our front yard? And then I saw it on the front steps and I had told myself ahead of time that when the moment happened, I was going to uninhibitedly, I don't know if that's a word, but it is now, just let myself experience joy. Not even intending to share all of that with anybody, but I just really wanted to fully go into it as if I was a little kid and I hadn't put all these other things in place. And so I did. And at one moment, I looked up and obviously my husband's smiling and he's recording me. But the look on my daughter's face, it was pure joy. And I think there was joy in this is really cool that you earned this silver play button. But I think equally, it was really cool to just see me enjoying and celebrating that moment and how important that is for us to do that for our children, for the people around us, and to let it be a joint celebration, right? Everybody who's been part of my journey got the silver play button. This was all of us together kind of reaching for that. Every time somebody said to me, hey, can I help you? Every time somebody gave me a pat on the back when I was having a rough day, all of those things contributed to this. And so that celebration says to everybody, this matters. And that's what you do, right? That's what you do by having them there and recognizing that. And the other thing that you said that I think is really helpful for all of us to remember, even those of us who have pivoted, sometimes what we think is going to be the way we go to get to something, even when it looks really clear, you're like, this is awesome. I'm on the Oprah show. Here we go. Check box. Now we're going to go to get the Emmy. That didn't become the path to that next thing. Right. Mm-hmm. But it didn't become well, now that's not going to happen. It was what can I do differently, or what will be the next step in my journey? You very much enjoyed and cherished your time on the Oprah show. It wasn't well, now that's not part of my Emmy story. So you very much enjoyed where you were at for that moment. And then you moved on to another one of your goals, and you did it without feeling like something was broken because it didn't happen the way that you thought it would. And that can be really hard. I mean, I've had stutter steps throughout this, ways that I thought things were going to happen and they didn't. And you have to kind of pause and think back on it. And I think that's why I ended up really sharing that video, even though I hadn't planned on sharing it, was because, partially my encouragement from my husband and daughter. Yeah. But I'm like, I think I want people to be able to see that joy can come. You don't have to hold back. It doesn't have to be very formalized. You can enjoy and really should embrace those moments. Yes. And how amazing is it when you look around you and see that other people are dancing with you, laughing with you.
I was.
whatever they may be. Yeah. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, that scream. What is that scream, Deb? But I think it was me doing what I had promised myself I would do. And so I wanted to kind of remain true to that. And I think
I'm so grateful for your husband for capturing that moment so that we could experience it with you. Even if we weren't there in person, I know I was dancing with you, and I know so many others were too. So thank him for for capturing that.
I will certainly. He's probably watching this, so he's getting the thank you now. The trickiest thing was then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to share this whole video. I have to find out a way to block out the address. So it takes forever to put that little blur spot. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, and the love that I've gotten on that. And I think, in alignment with what I was saying about the pivoting and the finding the journey in a different way, you wrote a story in a book, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it was I don't remember how quickly I read it, but at some point you shared it. And so I quickly got it on Kindle and was able to read it within, right away. And I'm like, that's such a cool analogy. So, I mean, I could certainly talk about it, but I want to give you a chance to talk about it. And then I'll share a little bit about my impact and the way that I really processed that.
Oh, awesome. Well, I just shared about a beach trip I took with my family. It was after COVID. We'd been stuck in the house for a long stretch. And we just took a beach vacation. And as I was sitting in the sand with my twins, building a castle, I noticed this teeny tiny little crab, like coming up from the surf, and then a wave would come in and wash him back out. And then he'd toddle his little legs along, trying to come back up to the dry sand. And it must have happened like 4 or 5 times. And then one time the wave came back and there was no sign of the crab. So I thought he just got washed out to sea. I didn't know where he was going. There was a part of me that wanted to help him, but he had those pinchers, so I didn't really want to. But then at one point, then we were just kind of sitting there digging, and I noticed this little head pop up out of the sand, a little, maybe a foot or so away from where he had been. So it wasn't so much that he just gave up and washed out to sea. He found a different way to get to where he wanted to be. He crawled through the sand and got there. And I don't know why I noticed this crab. I don't know, I think it was just, I actually let my mind wander for one, for all of that. And it just spoke to me in a way that made sense, that sometimes if you really want to achieve something, if there's a goal you really want to go after, you just have to look at it from a different perspective, find a different way through, over, around, whatever it might be, and just be like that persistent little crab and get there.
Yeah. So when I read it, there were a few things that were striking to me, and even listening to you tell it, it had the same impact on me. It's interesting. Even though I know the story, when you were just telling it, it had the same. So first off, one of the things I loved best was that you noticed the crab. So your book, you're part of that book. The greater book was about creativity.
Yes.
Right. And one of the things that I think is really important for people to note is I think a lot of times we think of creativity as being artistic, musical, right? Like we think, oh, those are the creative arts. We can be creative in many ways. We can be creative in the way that we navigate a path when we're faced with obstacles. We can also be creative by taking time to notice things, right? There's something very, very emotionally driven about the experience you had watching that crab.
Mm-hmm.
Because you weren't just like, mindlessly, like your mind did wander, but you weren't just kind of mindlessly watching. You were experiencing, what is the journey here? What is the process? And I feel you. Some of them, they really do have tiny little pincher crabs and the little pinchers, and so for me, it was also just beautiful to think of you so present in that moment at the beach that you were able to notice this experience of this crab, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't just like, okay, I'm going through the motions. So that first, right off the bat, it just resonated with me a lot. I'm the type of person that will like notice the way like the shadow on one thing of grass, and I'll be like, oh, look at the way that blows in the breeze. Like I like that. And sometimes I'm with people and they love that, but sometimes people are, and not even in a critical way, but are kind of like, okay, we got to get going here. Like,
right. Mm-hmm.
So it's not everybody's thing, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be everybody's thing. But at any rate, that resonated with me, that you're appreciating this crab. And then thinking about that crab and like that analogy of it is so profound because like, particularly when it comes to the ocean and it comes to trying to get back. I mean, if you've ever been at the ocean and felt the waves going up and down on your feet, that pull, the feeling of what that can feel like, right? Mm-hmm. And so everybody can relate to an experience where they felt like they were getting pulled out to sea by that wave, mm-hmm. right? There's nobody that I've ever met that would not be able to say, hearing that story, I know what that crab feels like. Right. I am trying desperately to do it. And there are times where we kind of let go and we go into the current. Sometimes that means that, the goal is lost or, something negative happens. And sometimes it just means like it's delayed. But whatever the case may be, sometimes we just let go into the current because we don't really think about the fact that it's not the process. It's that we have to think about a different way to do it. And that's what you did. Right. Mm-hmm. Obviously Oprah was a win in and of itself. So you were never like, getting pulled under the water, but you weren't quite there yet to that other item on your list, but you found that way under the sand. And this under the sand is not like a little clear little tunnel that you just like, hey, that's hard, right? Yeah. Like maneuvering through the sand. So everything about that was so sensory and so clear to me that I was able to kind of think about that analogy, and it's popped into my head multiple times when I thought about, like, okay, are you getting pulled out? Or are you going to look for, like, what is your under the sand route?
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to use that now. Because that's such a great way to think about it too, because again, you just never know what might happen. But as long as you're adaptable, as long as you're ready to try something new. There was another story I shared in there too about the movie Big Hero 6. And I love that movie. I watch a lot of animated movies. I have 3 little kids, but the big brother throws the little brother over his shoulder upside down and is shaking him around. He's like, you have to look at it from a different perspective. And then the little brother gets this brilliant idea. And that's really what it is. You just kind of have to shake it up a little bit and try and look at it from a different angle. Where's another way in? Do I have to go through the sand? Do I have to climb the fence? Whatever it might be, there's another way in.
Yeah. And I think that other way in and that shaking it up a bit really literally sometimes means you have to walk away from the situation, right? If I'm like at my desk, sometimes like I will actually have to walk outside or walk into a different room or something, because I'm like, I need to kind of get out of that space where I'm stuck. Like, why my mind isn't turning. Okay, I'm stuck. So I'm like, I'm going to move my body. And then when I move my body, I'm like, okay, new space. Now I can try to think about things differently. And so like, that's a good example as well, because the getting shook up, walking away out of the space doesn't mean walking away from what you're still going for. It means just giving yourself a moment to kind of gain that perspective, which is what you're talking about. Perspective is so crucial. Perspective is particularly crucial when you're navigating the media landscape. And you're trying to make sure that there's alignment with the person that you're going to be interacting with, the message that's being delivered, the overreaching purpose, that you don't just say yes because it seems like a great opportunity, that you don't, get dejected when you hear the no's. So that's a big piece of what you do too. It's helping people to find that sand path, helping people to get, shaken up, like you said, over the shoulder. But it's also helping people to emotionally cope with what it can feel like when you're digging through the sand or getting turned upside down.
Absolutely. And I always say no's aren't no's. They're just not yet. It's just not quite the right opportunity, or it's not quite the right audience. So you're going to find your fit as long as you're persistent, as long as you consistently put out great pitches and stay in contact with those people. You'll get that yes. You just have to, again, look at it from a different angle. What else can you say? How can you say it differently to reach that person where they need to be reached? So yeah, a no doesn't have to be the end of the road.
Yeah, which is, and I can say kind of for myself, right? Because I don't know other people's experience, but for me, I think initially part of it was like, well, I don't want to send this pitch, because if I send this pitch and it's a no, then then I know it's a no, right? And I think, you and some others very helpful in reminding, like, no, you're not going to message the person 15 times over the course of a day, but you can reach out again down the road, right? Like, you got to get yourself out there, and you got to just start. You've got to send those things, and you've got to accept that, even if it's something that you've got really high on your list of things that you want to do. And, there's a couple things right now that are building in my heart that I'm getting momentum for and putting together. And, I believe fully that however they unfold, they're going to unfold in a way that I can make use for my purpose on this earth. And so I think that's the not yet, right? Like, it may not even be this specific thing I want, but my greater purpose can be served in a way that's going to be, some other thing that's going to happen that I may not even imagine.
And it's those surprises that make it so sweet, because it could be something that just isn't even on your radar yet. And then there it is in front of you, and you just have to be ready to take it. But all that prep work that you're doing ahead of time is what is making you ready to take those opportunities when they present themselves.
Now, what got you, because it's a very, what you do, coaching people to navigate that is so important right now, especially with all of the things that are going on and the changes with the media and AI. What initially excited you about it, and what excites you about it now? And it might be the same thing.
My favorite part of being a television producer was finding creative ways to help tell a story.
Mm.
What kind of visuals do we need to bring in to make this compelling and captivating? And honestly and truly, that's still my favorite part when I'm coaching clients is getting them to think outside the box a little bit, getting them to reach a little bit farther, and come up with these great ideas. But then I don't have to do all the production work. We can hand it off to some other producers to do all that part. But it's that creativity. It's finding new ways to tell the stories. It's finding ways to reach the people they most want to reach so that they can help them.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, because you're not just telling the story in a way that's going to reach the media person, but it's the media person's audience, which is your audience, right? So there's like 2 layers of story. How do I get this media person to realize it's a story worth telling and this is the way to tell it? And then, how does this impact the audience down the road? Because you're right. Like I was talking to somebody yesterday, I don't know if I still have it here, my thesaurus, and I was talking about how one word, right? You look up what its synonyms are. Now we Google it. But when I was in school, I used the thesaurus and I always carried one around with me because I thought it was fascinating. You could take one word and you look it up in the thesaurus and there's 20 different words that mean the same thing. I ate air quotes, but I just used them, mean the same thing, but they really don't. They have very subtle differences in them. And that's just one word. Now you think about a bigger message. And how you could tell that message could be any number of different ways, but you want to find the way that's going to be, first off, that you're going to connect with, or else you're going to not tell it authentically, right? You could you could be told, oh, this is going to be the best sell, but if it doesn't feel real to you, then what's the point? Right. And then what is going to resonate with your audience so that they understand and connect with you, and finding those things that are going to do it. And you did it as a producer. You did it when you were pitching. You're doing it now while you're guiding people through that process. And so I very much see that. And so were you a storyteller as a kid as well?
I guess so. Yeah. And story's always been so important to me. I'm a total TV addict, whether it's talk shows or old sitcoms from the 60s, like all of that. I love TV. And I love the way it brings people together and helps them. Again, it's all about solving problems. If there's a struggle somebody's facing and you have a way of fixing that, why wouldn't you put it out there to help those people? And I think that's whether it's a talk show, whether it's a news program, whether it's a sitcom, they're all looking at different universal problems, things that everybody faces at some point in their lives, and are coming up with different ways of solving that problem and presenting it, often through a story. And I think, again, that's what resonates with people. That's what pulls people together and kind of helps us have that authentic universal story, that community feel. And I think that's what, again, drives me to do what I do. And I know that it drives the people that I work with to do what they do, because there's something there that they feel somebody needs to hear this, and I should be the one to share it because I have this unique experience and this new unique way of helping them solve it.
I really enjoy that you were talking about the importance too of television, because I think sometimes we can get wrapped up in the the unhealthy components of electronics and viewing things, which is obviously, if that's all you're doing or you're doing it in excess, that's a problem. And so we start to say like, oh, social media is bad or TV is bad, right? But they're really not. And the way that you just said it was profound, because I think for me, like when I was going through some of my periods of really deep depression, one of the ways that I would get through that is find a funny sitcom and have it playing in the background. That was how I would fall asleep. That was how I would get stuff done, is I'd have that funny stuff playing in the background, keep my mind on something funny. And when you think about the power of that, right, in order to be able to kind of maneuver through a very difficult emotional experience, I was watching people that I didn't know say funny things, and that was able to lift me. I mean, that right there talks about the power of the human connection, right? The ability to resonate. And so you're absolutely right. Whether it's a fictional story or a news story or a written story, however we're consuming the content, we have the ability to influence the way that people look at things and look at themselves in incredible ways. And that's why it's so valuable for us to share our stories, because we all have a unique story. And so for every one of our unique stories, there's a person out there that could benefit from hearing that story.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And those different perspectives, because you probably go through that problem differently than somebody else might, and they wouldn't have thought to approach it the way you did to come out the other side. So I think that's not to say that book knowledge isn't important.
Right.
We love to hear from a doctor who has those MD letters behind their name, or an attorney or whatever. That's absolutely valuable. But sometimes the most powerful guests are the people who've been through the situation that the audience is facing and came out the other side. It's that personal knowledge of going through that journey that can have the most impact. And those are the stories I most like to tell.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think because you were smiling, you were glowing when you were sharing that. It was really cool because I know the reason why you're smiling about it, because you're so passionate about it, because you know the impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I think that I would want people to know about what you just said that's important, that story, is that you don't have to wait until you are well known in order for that story to be important. And in many ways, it's cool for people to see you on the journey, right? It's cool to share that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And people love that. They love to know that they're not alone, that there are other people out there with these same struggles who are facing it head on or sideways or however they're facing it, that there's hope for them. It's all about building up hope. It's all about offering a new way of seeing that tomorrow will still come, that tomorrow it can be better. And that's really what sharing your authentic self is all about. And I think that's why people love social media influencers and that sort of thing, because we're seeing them in their real life. We're seeing them in their real habitat and how they're facing the day-to-day challenges that we're facing as well. And again, it could just be as simple as, oh, I could try that and maybe that would help me. Or, oh, I didn't think about looking into this resource that they suggested.
Right.
So, and just those simple little suggestions can make such a big difference for somebody out there who needs your message. So yeah, don't shy away from sharing your journey. Don't shy away from sharing your successes, your hopes, your dreams, because somebody out there really needs to hear it.
Yeah, and you help people to share it with the media so that the media understands the credential of their life credentials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their life resume, and how it's a testimony to why they're solid. And I have found, and that was a big part of how my messaging shifted, not entirely, but has definitely, evolved, that so many people leaned more towards who I was and the kindness component than they did about what clients I had worked with or what my education was or any of those things. And so, that's a lot of what I share with people. And they're like, oh, what do you think is like one of your number one tips? Like, how did you grow? And I'm like, when I just started like just being me and didn't worry about like crafting the perfect message. And I mean, there's certainly some things that I put together and I put out there and you think like, oh, this is going to do really well. And then it really doesn't. And there's other things that you don't spend a lot of time on and they do really well. And, so it's a lot of that's kind of a hit or miss. But at the end of the day, I'm like, if I just keep being me, then at least I know I don't have to ever look back and think like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to be saying or doing to be this other version?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're so right. You're so right. And I appreciate you. I appreciate that you were so patient with me when I was at that stage where I was like, I don't know what was the mind block. It doesn't even necessarily matter to kind of go back and figure out and unpack what it was. But the fact that I had been on stages and been in front of big corporations and stuff, but there was still something that was not letting me fully just be like, go ahead, put it out there, just be you. And seeing how far I have come from that, it's so important for me for other people to recognize the value that they have and the story they can tell, and that they can earn the silver play button and that they can earn the Emmy, right? That we show people that it's not something that happens. It's not something that happens to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
We all have these gifts that are worth sharing. So,
and I have absolutely loved watching your journey and seeing you step into fully embracing yourself. It's so much fun to watch.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that so many ways. I want to end with one of your final thoughts, but before that, I want to make sure everybody knows how they can reach out to you, whether they want to follow your journey on social media, they're interested in your services. What's the best way? And your book, you can also let them know how to get the book that you were in.
Yeah, so I probably the easiest way is just my website, DanetteKubanda.com, and then there's buttons there so you can follow on all the different social media. So I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of the good stuff. So yeah, definitely follow along there. I can share tips and tricks and get you out there and in front of the media so that you're ready to share your own stories. I would love that.
Awesome. Yeah, evidence here. So and if anybody is of my network that's watching and would like to be introduced, please do that. On occasion, sometimes people will just ask me if I can tee up an introduction. I would be more than happy to do that. So please don't hesitate to ask me for that introduction.
I would love that.
Yeah. I love connecting people. Like it's exciting to me when I like introduce people and then you just like watch the flower bloom. It's like, oh, that's so cool. So final thought before we say goodbye to everybody, what's a final thought you'd like to share? And it can be funny, inspirational, informational, whatever moves you.
Well, I think, to kind of fit in the theme of our conversation today, I'm going to share another quick little anecdote. Again, obsessed with cartoon movies and stuff because I have 3 little kids. And there is a Toy Story of terror, where Jessie is afraid to go into a box. And this little commando action figure tells her that Combat Carl never gives up. Combat Carl finds a way. And I have that in the back of my head all the time. He of course makes it Jessie doesn't give up. So I'm always saying that too. Danette doesn't give up. Danette finds a way. And I really hope that everybody else can have that voice in the back of their head when they're facing some hardship of some sort, that it doesn't necessarily have to be the end of the road. No means no in certain situations, but no doesn't necessarily mean no if it's something that you really want to go after. Just find a different way, maybe find a different end point to help you reach that goal. So
I love that. Yeah, that's a mirror note, right? That's like a mirror note every day. If you could say that to yourself, right? I always like to, I'm awesome, I'm amazing, I'm a miracle to this world, but I think like I don't give up.
Exactly.
Right? And we all haven't, because we wouldn't, we're where we are because we have multiple times faced obstacles and not given up. And sometimes we get through those with our own perseverance and grit alone. And sometimes we get through it by seeking advice and guidance from people who love into us and love into our message. So I appreciate you. This was awesome. I could go on and on and on. I always, the time, always flies by. And I finish these lives, I always make sure that I have buffer time afterwards. One, because obviously I don't want to overlap, but more importantly, I always like to sit and just think about the conversation. Not watch it, like reflect on what are the tidbits of it, because it's amazing to me how many times you could talk to the same person and learn something new and feel connected in a different way that you hadn't ever before. Mm-hmm. And in the same way that I know that what we say is going to impact people, I know that what we say is going to impact each other. And I just think it's I don't know that there's a word that I can one word that I can use, but incredible is the closest, I think, but that the impact that we can have in every time we share with one another. Yes. And you have been, an incredible person to share with since I started my, I'm going to become more visible journey to now. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for taking the time today to share so openly and lovingly, and your enthusiastic post and all the congratulations and stuff. It means a lot to me.
Well, I am just so thankful to be on this journey with you. It's so much fun to watch.
Thank you. There you go. Thank you. 1 million now. It's 1 million, right? We're going.
And it'll be here before you know it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. And so tell everybody again one more time. Don't give up. Give them the commando saying.
Jessie doesn't give up. Jessie finds a way. Combat Carl doesn't give up. Combat Carl finds a way.
I love it. Take care. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.